Welcome to the West Fireside Chat in honor of International Women's Day 2021. My name is Karen Coe, and I am the Managing Director of West, which is the one-on-one cross-company mentorship program for women in tech. So before we introduce our speakers, we'd love to hear a little bit from you in the chat. Please let us know where you're joining from and one woman who truly inspires you. So each year, International Women's Day celebrates the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women, and also puts forth a call to action for accelerating gender parity. The 2021 International Women's Day theme is Choose to Challenge. A challenged world is an alert world. We can choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequity, as well as help create a more inclusive world. With that, I'm excited to present Heidi Williams, who is the founder and CEO of West, as well as the head of B2B and VP of Platform Engineering at Grammarly. Take it away, Heidi.
Thanks, Karen, and thank you for all of your hard work in organizing all of this. It's great to see so many faces and see all of you here. So thank you all for coming. I'll just do a brief intro of myself. So as Karen said, I run engineering at Grammarly for B2B and platform, but I'm also the founder of West. I've been in the tech industry for 25 years now. It's hard to say that out loud, but I gotta be proud and own it. So never thought that I'd be in the industry as long as I have been. It's been a fun career working at different companies like Adobe and Box, and even had my own startup for 2.5 years, which was a lot of fun just before I joined Grammarly. So it's been an exciting career, but I started West back in 2016 because I realized a couple of different things. One, after 20 years in tech, women were encountering the same kinds of things that I encountered 20 years prior, and I thought that was a little bit crazy. And I also recognized that although there were a ton of efforts around the front part of the pipeline and getting women into tech, I'm a little impatient. I don't want to wait for 8th graders and high schoolers to become our next VPs and CEOs. I just don't want to wait that long. And there is a leaky pipeline in mid-career where women are leaving tech at mid-career, white women are leaving tech in mid-career at twice the rate of white men, and people of color are leaving at 3.5 times the rate of white men. So that's our next generation of directors and vice presidents and C-suite folks that are leaving, and we should be helping them get over whatever hurdle it is to get to that next level, developing their leadership skills. And so I got really excited about the idea of investing in them through a mentorship program, also recognizing a lot of women are in smaller companies where they don't have role models. So if you can connect with people outside of your company and get an objective perspective and find a new role model in the industry, you're way more likely to feel connected and be able to invest in your career and move forward. So that was the start of West. I'm really proud of how far it's come and super excited to have Karen joining the team as managing director to help take it to the next level. So thank you all for coming today, and really, really excited to introduce our two folks who will be doing the fireside chat with. So Claire and Rukmini, and I'll have each of you give an introduction, and also just as an icebreaker, would love to hear who is your female role model and what is top of mind for you these days. So Claire, do you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Claire Hough. I'm the CTO of Carbon Health. I've been involved with West from the 1.0 launch, right? I was at Udemy as a head of engineering, and Udemy actually had quite a few women, maybe not as many in engineering, about 23% women in engineering. But I felt that it was so important for us to encourage women to stay in tech and really develop their career. So we participated, I think, on every program, and I think it's been so helpful for the team at Udemy. And I hope to restart that now that I'm at another company, Carbon Health. For me, like mentoring has helped me, as well as like being a mentor has been such a rewarding experience for me. So, I encourage people to seek mentoring as well as be a mentor, because no matter what stage you're in, there's someone else that you could always mentor. And for me, like mentoring started with my sister, who's 4 years older than me. Like, I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 14, and both my sisters and I did not speak any English. And yet my sister, who worked in a stuffed animal factory for 9 months, when she arrived here, she got herself into junior college, and she transferred herself to UC Berkeley. and ended up graduating top of her class at UC Berkeley chemical engineering class. She went on to do her PhD at MIT, and she's now a professor. So she's been a great inspiration for me, that you could overcome these barriers and really do pursue what you want to do. I mean, she's my very close, family role model, but I have such tremendous respect. And I was down and out for about 48 hours when RBG passed away last year. And her passion for just fighting for all of us to, to have that equal opportunity. I have such tremendous respect for her.
Thanks, Claire. That's wonderful. Rukmini, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Rukmini Reddy. My pronouns are she and her. I am VP of Engineering for Platform at Slack. I've been here not very long. So like most of you, I joined a job or a company in the midst of a global pandemic where I've not met any humans before. So that's been an interesting part of the last year and top of mind. And I am an immigrant. I came here to do my master's. I've always wanted to be an engineer though. So I learned Logo when I was like 8 years old, fell in love with it, started to learn it because I hated sewing and I was trying to get out of needlepoint. It's a whole backstory there, but I'm so glad I did that. And my role model growing up was Mae Jemison because I love space, y'all. Like I had these posters of her and Kalpana Chawla back in my bedroom wall. And I was going to do one of two things. I was either going to be a computer engineer or a space engineer. And she has this amazing quote, which I recently shared with my teams. It said, I think, don't let other people's limited imagination hold you back, and don't let your limited imagination hold other people back. And I think so much of mentorship is that. So I keep thinking about like, it helps me grow every day, and it helps me see that I shouldn't let my imagination or my perception and my experience as a woman in tech hold somebody else's dream back. So with that, and I also just wanted to just share, I know it's been maybe a difficult day for a lot of us here, and I wanted to share how I'm checking in, and I'm checking in heartbroken. And I really struggled with the violence we witnessed yesterday and recently against the Asian American community. I just find it horrific and unacceptable. And this rising violence against the AAPI community is painful. And I think an urgent reminder that we all must unite against racism in all its forms. Racial trauma in the AAPI community is real. And I personally stand with the entire community, and it's so important. We all have so many different intersectionalities, and it's so important for us to take care of ourselves first. And I know being Asian and growing up with the stigma around mental health and resources, like please reach out, please ask for access if you're struggling with something. It's really important. Take care of yourselves, hold your loved ones close, and check in on your friends and family. I think that's how I'm checking in this evening, with that energy, more like I spent all day just checking in on everybody that I care deeply about and asking them how they're doing. So the managers on the call, if you haven't had a moment to do that, please do that. It's still not late, right?
Yeah, thank you, Rukmini, so much, and definitely appreciate you saying that. And I know both of you feel strongly in building that environment of psychological safety within your organizations and your teams, and so much appreciated that you're able to do that for people. So thank you, and hope everyone can take a cue to do the same for their organizations. All right. So let's check in on our first question. So we'll jump in. We prepared a little bit yesterday, and I loved hearing both of your stories. So I'm excited to jump in. I guess just a little precursor about thinking about challenge. You know, when you look up challenge in the dictionary, it seems to have a lot of negative connotations around competition, around dueling, I think is actually one of the words in the dictionary there. And it's funny because I definitely think about a challenge as an opportunity. I think about it as a positive. I think it as something that I like to seek out. And so I would love to hear from you, I mean, sort of in the frame of when is a time that you have been challenged to go outside of your comfort zone, and maybe tell us a little bit about what that was like and what your relationship with challenge is.
I can go first, probably. I'll tell you a little story. I was leaving India as a bright-eyed 21-year-old, never lived away from my parents, like, you know, had lived a very comfortable middle-class upbringing in life. And I was very afraid. I had actually never been on a plane in my entire life before that night. I was actually getting on a plane and just moving 10,000 miles away because that's my whole MO. Like, I was describing to Claire and Karen yesterday that and Heidi, I have a gif of Mickey Mouse on a wall, dangerously like accelerating towards the ocean and leaping into the air. Like, that's how I feel. That's usually my state of mind. And I was very afraid though. That day, I think I questioned everything and everyone. My Indian mother was like crying hysterical tears, like threatening to tear my airplane ticket. There was so much drama around me. And I'm like, maybe now's a good time to bail. Maybe I shouldn't do this. And my 98-year-old grandmother, whose shoulders on which I stand, she was a freedom fighter. She fought for women's voting rights. She lived to be 108 years old, bless her. And she told me that she took so many risks, whether it was illegal to drive as a woman in India, and she drove because she felt she had to, right? She bore this responsibility to her future generations. So she kept saying, I did all that and you were afraid of getting on a plane? Get on a plane. Like, she challenged me. And I said, okay, deep breath, I'm going to get on a plane. So people ask me, like, what's your bumper sticker, or how would you describe your life? And I say, it's hashtag. No, it's hashtags. Bumper stickers are irrelevant. It's get on a plane. Like, it's scary and it's hard. And most of us feel fear and courage at the same time. And it's when you're in those moments, owning that vulnerability and taking the leap is how I was challenged. And I hope you take that away as well today.
And how about you, Claire? That sounds like a sort of, a big motion, but your thoughts about challenge were a little bit different. Would you like to share your perspective there?
I think your challenges evolve as you progress in your career, right? Early in your career, I think your challenges may have been that self-confidence and being able to stand up for yourself or advocate for yourself. But as you actually take on additional responsibilities, your challenges change based on the responsibilities that you have. Your challenge of being a parent, your challenge of being a manager who has to make sure that people are well represented and recognized, and they have the safe work environment to work in with the right set of tools. So all those things, how you advocate for yourself in the beginning of your career has to translate into advocating for others as you progress in your career or progress in your life as a mom. And so, I think what I try to get over is all the fears when you have new challenge that you have to tackle. And I think the fact that you've tackled previous challenges helps you be stronger to tackle the next challenge. So I look at challenge as it's a continuum and progress in your life and career.
Yeah, that's great. And I loved, you gave a stat yesterday that you're on your 10th startup. So you're not someone who's risk averse. And so I'd love to hear around how do you, I guess either advice or sort of how you personally approach taking a risk and getting over that fear, if there is any. How do you go through that process of evaluating and deciding to do something new and take a risk?
I tell this to women in tech. You are all very valuable and amazing. The fact that you even got here, you tackle some of your fears to get here. So give yourself 1,000% more self-confidence, right? So for me, like I said, I tackle challenges as I progressed in my career. And I think that getting over, I think tackling those challenges actually helps you navigate through those fears or taking risks. Because if I'm not willing to take a risk and stand up for what I believe in, then I may be actually imposing that either unsafe work environment or unproductive work environment onto others as a leader. So I think a lot of my drive has to do with how I can best take care of people that I care about, that I work with, and creating that safe work environment. So I think that gives me the courage to take the risk. And many times I actually don't even look at it as risk. I think it's about serving others and you ultimately, in order to take care of the people that you care about, you have to be mentally healthy and you have to be strong. And I think almost taking a risk is like part of the job. And I guess I'm pretty, I'm pretty risky person to begin with. Maybe I'm not afraid, but I do have to also say that having that security of health insurance through my husband. My husband had one job while I had 10 jobs. And he has a very socially redeemable job of providing 911 systems. And he loves it, so he stayed in it. That meant I always had the health insurance to actually quit job and look for something else. So I think I'm privileged in that way.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and awesome that you were able to have that freedom to go explore and take risks. And Rukmini, tell me a little bit, like your grandmother may not always be the one telling you to get on the plane, but tell us a little bit about your process of taking on risks and how do you stay grounded?
Yeah, I think like for me, it's just like my mantra is like acknowledge the fear because you're going to have it, acknowledge it, own it, and work through it. Like move through it, because I think so many of us may be even afraid of being afraid, you know. If you think about it, it's very deep. It's like years of being raised as the marginalized gender or race. And if you're intersectionality, it's just muddy and complicated. Like Claire, I have a very supportive partner. What's slightly different with our scenario is we went to school together, we did computer science together. What's interesting is we've both grown both our careers together at the same time. So we actually take turns switching jobs every 3 years. And interesting fun fact, I have 7.5-year-old twin boys. And actually, since the time they were born, if I look back in time, my careers are anything grown in a meteoric point since then. And I was given stats about how difficult it is to raise twins. I was given stats about how a relationship usually doesn't last, a marriage usually doesn't last. Apparently 65% of twin parents end up with a divorce in the first 2 years. And I knew the numbers were against us, like, but we were willing to be in it together, support each other's careers. And I was sharing yesterday, I love Brene Brown. I mean, everything she says is incredible. And she recommends this tool, it's called a Rumble tool or something. She says, take a 1-inch by 1-inch piece of paper and write names of people whose opinion really matters to you. It's hard. There's not a lot of room there, and that's good. There's a couple names on my paper, and my partner's name is one of those, and his opinion really matters. So he's the one always nudging me to get on a plane and move forward and do things. And I think another thing I want to call out is like that fear we face early career, like, when you have your own imposter syndrome and you're struggling and you're mostly the only one on the team. I really hope for the next generation it's not, but even now, I think I'm the only one on my team at my level. So what I would say to you is, like, I always tell people, we're not cardiologists, thankfully. Nobody's going to, hopefully people's lives are technically not in our hands, so literally. So it's okay to make mistakes, right? I mean, take that mindset. If you ask around, like, yes, getting production down is a rite of passage, own it. It happens to all of us, right? And sometimes you get afraid and like, oh my God, I took production down. I would encourage you to ask how many people have been fired because they took production down. And then you realize, oh, no, nobody probably, right? So the stakes are not as high as I imagined it to be. So just leaning into that is really important. And it helps you go into new areas of growth when other people might be afraid to do it.
Yeah, it's a great thought exercise. I always like to play the game of what's the worst that could happen if I take on this challenge. And more often than not, it's not that bad. Most decisions you make in life are somewhat reversible, or, it's like, so what if you go to a job that turns out to be terrible after 3 months? You can quit and find another job, hopefully. So anyway, I think that's an interesting way to think about it, and to realize, like, the worst is actually maybe not as bad as you think it could be.
I just wanted to add one more thing. Like, I describe myself as a Boolean variable to everyone. Like, I'm always yes, no on everything. And that's really helpful. So when you're saying most decisions are reversed, that's how I feel. That's why I feel comfortable being that Boolean. And I describe myself to engineers like, I'm a Boolean. I'm a yes or no on everything. And it's great because then I can go back and change my answer and be just the other thing that it didn't work out the first time. So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Awesome. So maybe flipping from sort of how you challenge yourself to thinking about a slightly harder question, but maybe examples of when you challenged the status quo and sort of how that went for you, or maybe when an opportunity where it was hard to challenge the status quo, and what were some ways that you sort of did it in a safe way for yourself. So Claire, do you want to go first?
I shared this story with Heidi before. One of the companies I joined along the way of my 10 startups, I didn't realize how bad the culture of the company was. I should have done, back then we didn't have Glassdoor. So I joined the company to find out that it was, the company was doing really, really well in terms of business, but the founder was a very driven person who at times like blew up. I think he had chemical issues, but I'm not going to diagnose. But like when he kind of felt like something was going wrong with the company, he would just have these blow ups. Sometimes with particular set of people, or actually like targeted at one person. So I was very uncomfortable with that culture. And the first month, I thought like, oh my God, what did I join here? I think I should leave. So that I already had that in mind when he and I had a conversation where he actually attacked one of my directors. So I went to like, and well, clearly I made this face, a very like discontent face. He actually called me into the office and started having this conversation. And in the middle of that, it was like, I think I was 4 weeks into the company, and I said to him, so and so, if you feel that I'm the wrong fit for this company, and because how I feel about what's going on here, then let's part ways. Because I'm gonna go quietly. I don't need severance package or anything. I have health insurance, so I could leave anytime. Because I don't really like you like bad mouthing somebody when they're not even there in public. So I clearly stated what I did, what I was unwilling to put up with, right? So, and I also gave him the option of just firing me right then and there. And again, it's because I have that safety net of my husband and all that. But I really felt like, okay, I mean, I've seen you behave like this, and this was the line I wanted to draw. And I didn't feel unsafe. I thought if he lets me go, it'll actually be like what I've been thinking about anyway. But I mean, he was a very, very smart man. Like, I mean, he also had no filter between what he was thinking and what he was saying. And because he was so smart, also like most of the time I was learning so much from him as well. So you had to balance like what I was learning from him versus how his behavior just did not meet the standard of like what I consider the leader. And because he's smart, he didn't want to lose me, right? So he, totally took a step back and said something like, at least you stand up for your people. So that was his way of complimenting him. But I think using that opportunity and occasion, I was able to coach him to, don't blow up at people. When you're frustrated, you can have a conversation with me, but don't blow up in front of like everybody, because it'll result in our like high attrition rate, which was very high at that point. So I think through that occasion, we were able to build a trust relationship, and he did, not completely, but curve like the number of times he blew up at people and try to let me manage the people in our organization.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it does take courage to speak up like that. But I think you had also mentioned that in that situation, you did have a little bit of positional power as well. And so I think Rukmini, on the opposite, you had sort of mentioned experiences where you don't always have positional power or a safety net at the time. And maybe you'd be willing to share, your thoughts around how can you challenge the status quo or choose that now is not the right time, just based on your experience.
Yeah, so unfortunately for me, like I had to face maybe an additional level of trauma as a woman entering in tech because I was an immigrant. And my entire time in America depended on my ability to keep my work visa, first my student visa, then my work authorization, then my work visa. It's a whole journey, and the system is so incredibly difficult and stacked up against you. So you don't have the luxury to be able to quit a toxic situation. You just don't. And it was really hard for me just describing how I live my life. And for me, it just didn't feel authentic to how I was. But what was at stake for me was interesting, like the way the weird, bizarre immigration system works in this country is like, if I left a job, it would mean that I would have to leave my partner here in this country and move back. So the stakes were really high for me personally and professionally. And it was, and I also almost felt like I was coached to feel grateful for the opportunity I got, because not a lot of other people got this opportunity as a woman of color. And it was hard for me to stand up for myself and be asked to treat well. There was even an incident which was so traumatic, like someone raised their hand at me. And it happened much later on in my career, and I was in a position of privilege, but I knew the business wouldn't fire that person, right? So how I approached that conversation, I just went and said, you need to keep that person so far away from me. Even if they hover around me, then I can't. But these are really uncomfortable, difficult scenarios, and it happens to all of us, no matter what level we are at, right? So how do I guide myself through this? I have core values that I rely on to help me make all my decisions. And my core values are courage and love. And there are some lines that I will not cross. Like at a certain point, there's some things that are not redeemable and you have to walk away. And I strongly encourage all of you to like invest in your self-growth and a lot of identifying your own triggers and your own values as a human and what matters to you. Because in moments when there's so much distress and trauma, sometimes it's hard to think straight. So having something so fundamental to who you are, as like, I have 2 core values. I recommend keep it 2. More than 2, it gets confusing. So my whole tip is like, keep it to 2. I use the 2 to guide me through all these messy decisions. And I also want you to know, like, I've come a long way, and now I'm in a position of privilege and a position of power, and I can quit on a dime, and I'm so grateful for it, but I don't ever take that lightly. And I, as a manager now, I make sure I have that empathy for other people who might not have the same position of privilege as me.
I think that's such a key point, that all of our lived experiences make us who we are and make us more aware of how we can pay it back in the future, and be allies and advocates for people who may not have any kind of power to change their situation. And we have a heightened awareness of maybe what situation they're going through and how we can help. And so I love that as, that's one of the reasons why we want more women in leadership roles and more people of color in leadership roles, is because it just heightens your awareness of how the entire environment can be improved and how we can together change the status quo. So I really, really appreciate that thought and that recognition that not everyone is in a place to challenge the status quo at all times. So maybe just one note on, sort of the positive side. How do you pay it forward? How has mentoring, do you mentor others? How do you think about challenging the people that you mentor? Would just love to hear a little bit about that. I guess, Claire, do you want to go first again? I keep picking on you first, sorry.
So I have mentors that I've kept in touch with like over 10 years, but I also have mentors through where I'm a board member, but I also mentor on Play-Doh. People can look at my profile and choose me for anywhere from 1 session to 6 sessions or beyond. And I think it's just important for people to have that resource, right? So, I feel like, and like I really appreciate Rukmini talking about her traumas. And, we all have times when we were marginalized and was traumatized. And I think bringing that to the table and helping people experience less going forward, right? So just making yourself available, giving them support and tools to really get over whatever challenges that they may be having. So I felt like just being out there and being available is my way of paying forward, but building those relationships and really like, at some point you're no longer mentor mentee, but you're just colleague, right? Because they have their set of experience, and I learn from them, and I learn from their experience. And I think all of us at any given point in our career, no matter how how much I have progressed, I think I could use a mentor as well. So just always being in that mode of learning, always being in that mode of being able to give is, I think, where I want to be until I die. Like even if I quit job and retire, I want to be in a position of being able to give as well as continuing to learn.
That's wonderful. Rukmini, what are your thoughts on mentorship and paying it forward in that role and in challenging yourself and others?
I just wanted to take shout out. Like, I think sometimes, it's hard. We look around, the mentors don't look like us, so we presume we can't get mentorship. And I think that's something that we women and non-binary individuals have to work with ourselves personally, because I look back recently, I had an aha moment over the last decade or so, and it was 3 white men who sponsored my career. Right. And if I shied away from asking for help or leaning in when they were offering me that support and help because they didn't look like me or because representation mattered to me, like I would have missed out on that opportunity. So I would encourage you to have an open mind. Like sponsors and advocates and mentors come in different shapes and forms and sometimes don't look like you, and that's okay too. I would love for a world when I look around and the boardroom's filled with kick-ass women of color. Like that's the dream, y'all. But meanwhile, we have a lot of work to do. So I would encourage you to not hesitate because someone doesn't look necessarily like you. I want to remind you of that. And for me, it's I always wonder, do these men have secret societies where they're sharing tips with each other? Maybe they do, right? Because every time in the Silicon Valley, I meet somebody who's like, I just went for a coffee chat. And I'm like, yeah, right. I just feel like we women, how I like to mentor is I like to give you tips and tricks on exactly something that worked for me that you should just use. And then you should share with 10 other women, and those 10 women go share with a pyramid Ponzi scheme. 1,000 of us now know about this template, and we don't need need to go to a fancy business school and spend $50,000 to know about that template, right? So that's how I value mentorship. It's almost like a rogue campaign of viral campaign of spreading information among women. So we also have these tips and tools, and it shouldn't feel like you have to be privileged or go to a certain school or be a part of a certain community to have that access. So I write in spirit of that. I really nudge myself to write more. I had a lot of things that I just kept internally and I didn't share till a couple of years ago. And a sponsor, a white man, nudged me to share my story. And that's how this all began. But I love mentorship. I can always use more mentors in my life. And I do mentor at Hackbright Academy, and because I believe non-traditional paths to STEM, and at Plato, like Claire. So giving back, paying it forward.
I love that. And I'd love to share maybe one story, even thinking about, mentorship doesn't have to feel formal. Of course, West is a structured program, but there's also micro mentorship and just mentorship moments that happen. And just one, as I reflect back on my career, in a moment where a peer and I challenged each other. Essentially, I had been going through my head, I sort of wanted to put myself up. It didn't exactly work this way, but I wanted to challenge my boss to put me up for a VP promotion. Would have been my first VP promotion. And of course, the mental engine started going and saying, I'm not ready, and I've only 60% qualified, and I don't know, I don't look like the other engineering leaders necessarily, I don't do what they do, I have this other sort of business mindset that I bring in that's different from them. And so I was having this crisis of confidence around it. Happened to be heading home on the train, ran into a friend, and I told her my story, and she said, I was just doing the same thing. I'm trying to go up for director and I think I'm not qualified. And I was like, baloney, you are. And she said, well, you are too. And she said, all right, I dare you to go up if I go up. And so together we both decided to put our cases in, we reviewed our cases, we made the cases to our bosses, and we both ended up getting promoted. So I feel like without that moment of saying, I'll do it if you do it. And, to Claire's earlier point, it's easier to take a risk on someone else's behalf than your own. And so it was just that moment where I absolutely love it. And now, so anyway, it just amazing, whether it's a moment like that or an official mentor.
I love that story, Heidi. I think we women sometimes just need permission from somebody else. We need somebody to speak the truth loud out to us. It's super interesting. I always tell women who come to me saying, the men think they're ready for the next level the minute they get to one level, right? And here you are, you probably put in 5 years at that level. You can clearly crush it, but somehow in your own head, you're holding yourself back. So I just speak to you what you need to hear yourself. And there's so much power in that.
Yeah, thank you. And I do think also the way that we both did it was to say, I don't care what the rubric says, I'm going to tell you my story, not what the rubric says my story should be. And so that was also sort of a way to say, I don't accept your rules. So Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we're about ready to have our closing question, and then we will go into Q&A. So everyone should start thinking about what questions they want to answer. So maybe Rukmini, I'll start with you because you said that you have a ton of tips that you love to share with folks. But what is one main takeaway that you would like to leave with our attendees today?
I just want to share with you that the road is very challenging, but you're not alone. Like, you can find a community that you can identify with, and I think find your people, find your courage, let go of criticism that doesn't matter. You got this. It's not one takeaway, it's several takeaways, but you get the gist of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Claire, how about you? Any key takeaways for folks?
Well, I similar with Rukmini, but you know, like, you're gonna run into people who are detractors in your life, and you are gonna run into people who are allies, people who wanna, you know, help you and support you. Ignore those detractors. You know, sometimes people give you some statement that's very negative, and we tend to like reciprocate it and stay with it, and what does that mean and all that. Don't do that. Just really take the positives and like push out the negatives, because you deserve all the positives, right? No one deserves any negatives or anything that takes you down or makes you feel sad or bad or whatnot. So surround yourself with allies, and, you know, have that, like I said, have that 1000% self-confidence that you deserve. Because I think women, when it comes to just how we project ourselves or how we participate and how we show up, I think we all deserve that, and yet, like, we don't give ourselves enough credit. So just remember that you deserved 1000% more confidence than whatever you have now, even if you're the most confident person.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I think maybe I'll just add, yeah, again, coming back to, you know, challenges are opportunities for growth. And I think, you know, really thinking about how to take control of your career and where you want to go and what you want to learn and who you want to surround yourself with, and either learn from or just enjoy the experience. But you know, we learn a lot from our failures. I think everyone has heard that you learn and grow more from your failures than from your successes. And so not finding a way to be comfortable with that and be ready to maybe have a year that's bumpy in order to grow is really, really valuable. And it is an investment in your future as much as you can be. So would just, again, encourage everyone to think of a challenge as a positive as opposed to a negative. So well, thank you all. That was our official set of questions. We would love to open it up to any questions. You can put them in the chat. Or Karen, are you able to unmute folks so that they can, or have them raise their hands?
Actually, I see that Olga's put in a question. And Olga's question is, have you had situations where you were told no, but had to keep challenging this answer?
Rukmini's got one.
Yeah, I felt like I heard no for like the first 15 years of my career, and then I just stopped hearing it, right? It's just, that's how I feel, like the TLDR. That's how that landed with me. I was like, no. I was like, okay. And then I just stopped hearing it. I just ignore it. I don't hear it anymore because somebody once told me sin first and ask for forgiveness later. So now I just do whatever I want and then be like, oh, was I not supposed to do that? Sorry, I didn't know. But that strategy has worked out really well. And no, all jokes aside, I did have several people say, no, I cannot give you this new job or this new role that you're aspiring to be in your current company, because if you go there, what's going to happen to my team, or you're being disloyal, made me feel a lot of guilt for asking for more for myself. They said no if I wanted to get promoted to another level. I mean, it goes on and on. It's I think learning to ignore it has been really helpful for me. Claire?
Yeah, for me, like, I never take no, because it's not black and white ever, right? If somebody says no to me, I want to know, like, what shade of no is this, right? So what are the ways that this will become more toward yes? So I would ask that question. So, I mean, I think when I was young, I was very black and white, but I realize most things in life are gray. So then I also never say no to anyone who asks me for things. And it's really more like, well, maybe not now, but let's work toward that. Or maybe that's not the best solution, like until we understand more. So like let's do more like talking and learning and figuring out what the right solution is. Because I think no is so like damaging or so definitive, and I don't like no.
I have an orthogonal thing to that though. I encourage all women of color to say no a lot. So I don't hear the no, but I say no a lot. I'm like, nope, not gonna do it. It's not on my roadmap to crush my goals. Sorry, I'm not gonna dilute my code and say no. I don't want to do all your D&I work for you. No, thank you. So it's just like really important. I think like I understand I'm a leader and I'm in a position of privilege, but I also have like this like women of color thing of not saying yes to everything everybody gives you. So
that's a great point. And just adding on to that, when people do say no, it doesn't have to be the end of the conversation, like Claire said, and some great follow-up questions are why? Tell me more about that. Or, I would like to understand your reasoning or something like that, where you can get someone to understand, like Claire said, that there are pieces behind the no. You just have to understand what part they're actually objecting to, and maybe you can work around it. That's great. So I see another question here. I just read X and Y by Eugenia Chang, which I love because it called out how women and men think they have to behave in stereotypical masculine ways to be successful, which ends up perpetuating that system. Do you have thoughts on that as you've gone through your careers? Do you feel you can play to your own strengths as women and still be successful? It's a great question.
do you want to take it?
I think I consider myself having had a lot of privileges and had allies along the way. And I had my set of traumas, by being marginalized or not given credit for the work I've done and all that. But again, like I try to ignore the detractors. And if they push me down, I want to get up as soon as I can to show that you can't push me down, right? So I think as a woman, I bring a lot of strengths to the table, like empathy, caring about people. And also, I think having that overall picture of what's going on in the organization has really helped me be a better leader. So I really never think that because I was a women leader, that I was somewhat disadvantaged. Sure, I mean, there are moments when people marginalize you, yes, but like I said, those are not people that you should pay attention to anyway. So my that caring instincts and just having a lot of empathy, wanting to get to know people, all those qualities I think really help me be a better leader. So I'm proud of being a women tech leader.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. Actually, I think what I bring is very unique, and I don't see it in most men who are leading in Silicon Valley. Like, first and foremost, I want to say that execution is table stakes, like 100%. Like, yes, you can be caring, empathetic, all of that, but again, I think what matters at the end of the day is how you're executing for the business, especially in engineering leadership. So, and technical chops, I think those two are like table stakes when you enter a position. But I think just bringing your whole self in, I lean hard into my vulnerability and I own it. I own who I am on most days. And I just embrace failure and treat failure as a very great intermediate step for me. I mean, never the end goal, but it's on my journey to get to something good. I'm going to fail a bunch of times and I own it. And I think that we could use more of, in tech and specifically in the Valley. I would love to hear more stories of failures and how we overcame them and I think that's what's something unique I bring. And I also, people have shared with me just like my EQ and the way I think of things more holistically. I refer to engineering teams as communities because I think we are, isn't it? Like with our own, like who we are, how we work together. I invest a lot in principles of working and norms, whether it's social norms or team norms and stuff like that, that I think when the going gets hard as in startups or in venture capital, and when you're expected to go 3x every year, year after year, I don't know how you do it for 10 years, Claire, but things like that, like you need to have some baseline with which you interact with other humans. And that's where like the stress Claire described earlier about a CEO came in. And so I bring all of that, which I think is a pretty good wholesome package. So
when I think about it, I sort of think about, I don't feel like I grew up necessarily feeling particularly feminine. I was just reflecting an hour or so ago with a friend around why was it my goal as a kid to be so excited to be one of the guys? It was actually a specific goal that I wanted to be like my brother, hang out with his friends, be able to throw football, play sports. I also did ballet, but at the same time, I feel like there's a weird thought process there about why did I want to be one of the boys? But on the other hand, my whole life, I feel like I can't be anything but authentic. And so for better or worse, for who I am, I'm going to tell the stupid puns. I don't care if people laugh at me, even if it's a polite laugh. I'm going to tell them anyway, because they make me happy. And I think it creates some fun. And I guess I just have a quick story about being authentic. And I guess maybe two small things if they don't take too long. One, I went into a leadership course that I had when I was at Vox, and there was another director, I think we're both directors at the time, and he was really struggling with being one person at home with his family and being an entirely different person at work. And I said, why do you do that? Like, just be authentic, be who you are. And I think he had stalled in his career at that director level. And the minute that he flipped, all of a sudden he went from this serious, straight-laced, all about the work person to being this warm, funny, engaging person. And his career took off after that. And he quickly got to VP and then to a GM level. And it was just one of those things where I think authenticity, as much as you can get there, is the path forward. There's really just no other way. It's too hard to maintain a facade of being different people if you can get there. So, on the other hand, though, I will say on the empathy front, I have realized that empathy is both a strength and a weakness. And I've had feedback that I'm too empathetic, that I may leave a room in a hard conversation and someone will think that I have completely agreed and are on their side and are going to do what they need me to do. When in fact, what I'm saying is I empathize, but let me go think about it and figure out what my action is going to be. Like I feel the pain, but I'm not sure that I'm going to take the action that you say you want, because that might not be the right choice. So I think there's a balance there of how do you be empathetic, but then also be really clear about the I feel for you. That's not necessarily what I'm going to do, but let's feel better first. So anyway, it's an interesting challenge there.
I think there's a slight tangent to that. If you show up authentically as a leader and you actually state exactly how, so one of the first conversations I have with people who join my team is, how do you like to receive feedback and give feedback? First conversation, I'm like, how do you like it? Tell me, because you're going to hear from me in the way you like to receive it, that feels comfortable to you, that feels psychologically safe to you. At the same time, I'm going to share how I usually deliver feedback, so we understand that I am doing this authentically. And that would really help with a situation like that, where you there's no misunderstanding of ruinous empathy versus radical candor, and it's kind of clear.
Exactly. Well, we have two more questions in the chat. We have, how did you find or shape your leadership style?
I wouldn't say I was always a great leader. And like I said, it's always a learning process. And I think I practice what it feels good to me and what I feel is working in terms of, getting stuff done and motivating my team and providing that right set of tools and right environments for them to be productive. So it's a lot of learning along the way, and also a lot of learning from others through your mentors or reading books. And Rukmini brought up Radical Candor. When I read that book, that was very much my communication style. Very direct and very candidly, saying things. But what I realized was that the fact that I really care about them wasn't always known, right? So you have to really care about the person that you're giving that direct feedback to, but they have to know it. You have to have that trust built in. So I think sometimes when you are giving feedback, because you feel like it, for me, any feedback should be a gift. So I feel like you're giving feedback, but if the receiving party, like Rukmini said, if they're not receiving it as a gift, then it's not a gift. So it's important to really find out, or important to build that trust relationship, and they know that you care, and what you're telling them is coming from really being care and like really wanting them to grow.
I love that. I think trust is the basis for everything. Otherwise, you can't. It's like a relationship at work. I call them work relationships. Like that's how much weight and importance I give them. And I think for me, it's my leadership philosophy is shaped a lot on self-work. I have to own how I show up for my people. It's my responsibility, and it's a huge burden and a responsibility which I don't take lightly. I work extensively on my own leadership development. So for years now, I've invested in an executive coach, so I can work on my own triggers and my own trauma. And as a woman of color, immigrant, mom of two, engineer, like how does that manifest? How do I show up for my team? And how do I react to stress that can manifest in different ways? And I do a lot of in personal development so that I can be my best self for the people who I represent, and I can do the best job advocating for them. It's an investment. It is also rewarding, right? At the end of the day, when you hear those stories of they make your heart happy, but it's a lot of work. And I wish more leaders took more responsibility of how they showed up.
So we have another question, and maybe I'll take the first stab at this one. How have you balanced career, children, and partner? And maybe it's not exactly answering this question, but one of the ways I've developed my leadership style, I actually think I've learned a lot from parenting. So I think I wrote an article, not an article, but an email to engineering one year on Mother's Day talking about the parallels between being a parent and managing engineers, just in terms of, giving structure and having guidelines and, sort of being able to build the trust and giving feedback and whatnot. So I don't know, for me, they are very, very much intertwined. So I guess just to that question around how have you balanced careers, children, and partner, I think all three of us are in a very lucky situation, privileged situation to have very supportive partners that have given us the space to do that. I happen to be in a situation where some of my biggest sort of career bets that I've made, for example, my husband decided to be a stay-at-home dad for a few years. He says it was the best job he ever had. And so it's actually been interesting to see the opposite of someone as you're reaching, 40, 45, 50, trying to get back into the workforce and having a break. Even as a man, it's hard, and it's just less common that it happens. So I think we have a good balance, and he actually recently quit his job. And so there's, again, that, especially during COVID, I think it's been really hard to manage school. Are you in person or not, and whatnot. And so that's something that I'm very, very thankful for in the recent month, as he's been able to pick up a lot of the shuttling back and forth and the things that need to happen there. So to me, I guess balance is not on a day-by-day basis or even a week-by-week basis. It's sort of, harmony over your life. And there might be years where you say, this year is going to be a hard year and I'm not going to spend as much time with family, but next year I'm going to feel better and in a better place where I actually can spend more time with family and take more vacations and whatnot. So I think about it as a long haul, as opposed to trying to balance it daily.
I have to admit that I am not a good work-life balance person. I wouldn't say I balanced my life well over my career, but like Heidi said, I navigated and made it work. I get a lot of help. So my husband's he's a great support system in the house, but I have a nanny who's been with me for 17 years. Because I have a disabled child, and she's she's the second mom to my son. So I build a relationship of people who support me, and I support them in their life as well, so that I could sustain the workload that I have and allow other people to step in and help me. Clearly doing 10 startups is no small feat. So there are times I felt very guilty of not spending enough time with my daughter and all that. And I try to do my best. And as my daughter complained quite a bit as she was growing up, because we live in a neighborhood where there are a lot of stay-at-home moms still. But she went on to college and kind of saw there are other lives out there as well. And she did come back and tell me that despite the fact that, she has a disabled brother, the fact that I never missed her major events at school, like her play, her choir concert, or anything like that. And, I always made sure that I'm there for her. So she said, thanks, Mom. Like, you never missed any major events in my life. So I think I just have to take comfort in the fact that I'm doing my best, and that, that I'm not screwing up badly.
I can resonate with all of that. I think I feel like guilt is a wasted emotion on women. Like, let's not waste our, don't spend a lot of time. Like, it's okay. The kids will be fine. I don't think there's anything called balance. It's integration. I love my work. Like, I like to jam on my work at night, and that's okay because it works for me, right? Like, I love it. I love being in the zone. If you all have coded, the zone, right? And I feel like I'm in the zone and I'm so engaged and I love it. And I don't think I should sacrifice that. Yes, I did train my sleep. My greatest achievement, period, in life is to get my twins to sleep at 7 p.m. So my kids sleep even today at 7 p.m. And then I'm like, yeah, Netflix time, me time, coding time, whatever time I have for myself. So do what works for you. Again, in the end of the day, managers on the call, do more to support your parents. Like, I think this is where, like, yes, we are saying our women shouldn't feel guilty, but at the same time, like, what are environments and companies doing for them? And we can ask for more. We should ask for more support. And like Claire, I surround myself with help. I discovered this new service called Chef, where they make homemade meals and send to me. So I'm like, yeah, sign me up. 4 days a week, I get food from Chef. I have a nanny. I will literally, like, do everything to free my time up so that my interactions are high fidelity and high value with my children. So
I love that. And maybe just one parting thought, adding on to both what you said. I think as leaders, you can also model the behavior you want to see in others. So for example, all during COVID, I have blocked my lunch hour to say that is lunch hour with my kids, or to say I'm going to, don't have it just be an empty block, actually label it that this is parent-child time and model that so that other people, men and women, feel that they can also take time with their children. Another example, I noticed that a couple happened to be dads were booking half-hour vacation days to spend time with their kids. And I said, if it's a half a day, don't call it vacation, just do it. I know you're good for the work. You're going to get your stuff done. You don't need to take a vacation day to spend time with your kids who are feeling cooped up and going crazy. So just do it. Don't worry about it, right? So I think there's lots of ways as leaders we can model for all parents how to have a more balanced, and accept that there are school events that you need to go to and that you don't want to miss, and it's okay. So well, I think we are out of time. I don't know if folks can stay on for a little bit to continue asking one-on-one questions or whatnot, but just wanted to thank you all for coming. It's been wonderful to see so much interest and so much engagement over the hour. Hope you enjoyed the insights from Rukmini and Claire, and thank you very much for coming. And last call, if you are looking for a mentor, our next cohort starts in March, so you can check us out at joinwest.org. Karen, any closing remarks?
Rukmini and Claire and Heidi, thank you so much for all of your insights, all of your vulnerability. And it would have been amazing to see your children come in, Rukmini.
Yeah, at this point, I just laugh about it. There's nothing else I can do.
So with our attendees, actually, you have the ability to unmute at this point. So if you did want to say anything to our speakers, please feel free to do so. We also have a feedback survey that I would love for some of your insight, because we're always looking for ways to find new speakers, and also really, being able to bring forward the conversations that are most meaningful for our West community. So thank you so much for sharing your time, and thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
May I also say we are hiring at Carbon Health. So please let me know if you like to look at some opportunities with us. Yeah.
Plus, yes, more women in the team. We are also hiring at Slack. Please feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I post regular openings. Yeah, good luck with everything. You all got this. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining.